Hello loves and welcome to today's video. This is my June recap video and I am pretty happy with the amount of reading I got done in June. I finally feel like I'm back on top of my reading goal for the year. I managed to finish 30 books in 30 days of June for a total of 4,125 pages and 129.88 hours of audiobook. So like always, we're gonna go through each book, what I thought of it, and we'll start in the lowest rated, make our way to the best of the month. The lowest rating that I gave out in the month of June was a 2.75, and that was to The Burning Maze by Rick Riordan. This is the third book in the Trials of Apollo series. I really loved the Percy Jackson books, and I was pretty excited about the Trials of Apollo series because Apollo is one of the gods I find to be more interesting as the sister of my favorite goddess, Artemis. I am just struggling with these because one, I think some of the Roman mythology is not very well explained in my opinion. And then also I feel like a lot of this is them talking about making plans and then the plans are executed very quickly and then I'm not getting as much action as I wanted. It feels a lot of talk and not a lot of action. I am kind of struggling with this. I don't know if that is something that is common to Rick Riordan's writing or is unique to this series and I just didn't notice it in the other series. Regardless, not really driving with this series, so 2.75 for that one. Next, we have 3.25 stars and we have 5 books that I gave this rating to. The first is Scenes from the Underground by Gabriel Colette. This was a non-fiction book and it is described as a series of Instagram-style vignettes about the author's experience in different party scenes in like Berlin, New York, Montreal. I think he was in France at one point. It is really just the stories of him getting really messed up on drugs and having some weird sexual encounters with strangers in bathroom stalls. That was what this book was about. And it was a book that was nominated for like a queer LGBT2SL plus award in Canada. I mean, he does have gay sex in it. For me, it just didn't really say anything more interesting about the queer experience as a whole. I thought it was an odd choice for nominations in this award and it just was not the book for me, so that one got a 3.25. Some of the photos in it were really interesting. Next is Milk Fed by Melissa Broder, and this got a 3.25. I'm not gonna go too far into my thoughts on this one because I will have a vlog of me reading that coming soon. I just didn't want this video to come out too far into the month of July. So Melissa Broder, Milk Fed. This is about a woman with an eating disorder who's like in therapy for it, and then she gets into a relationship with this Orthodox Jewish woman, and so it has a lot of descriptions about like very disordered relationship to food, and this one got a 3.25 for me. Melissa Broder certainly has a way of writing characters, not a way that I jive with. Her characters are terrible people and they kind of suck. So that one wasn't for me. If you want more thoughts on that, video coming soon, subscribe. Self-promo is hard. Next 3.25 is A Court of Frost and Starlight by Sarah J. Maas. This is the 4th book, arguably, in the Court of Thorns and Roses series. This is a Christmas special, let's be honest. This is a book where Feyre and all of the friends she's made in her journey in the first 3 books have a solstice party where they exchange gifts. It's a Christmas special and it gets a 3.25 because what did this add to the series as a whole? Not much. We kind of get inklings of like the effects of the war. It's very much fluffy and doesn't delve too much into more of the harsher feelings other than like what we already know Nesta and Elaine are feeling from previous books. And I'm now just noticing this is actually book 3.5, so it makes sense, but still doesn't add much plot-wise. Character study-wise, I guess, but if you really love the characters and you want a Christmas special episode, go ahead and read it. To me, I probably would have given this a pass if I had known that. Next 3.25 is Chrysalis by Anuja Varghese. This was another one of the nominees for that LGBTQ Ogilvy Prize. Writers Trust of Canada award. This one was a series of short stories about what it is like being a racialized person in Canada. Very specifically, I think the majority of them were Indian Canadian. There were stories in here that were queer, but it wasn't an exclusively queer book. This was just so reliant on you knowing Toronto, and very culturally Toronto. Me, who hates Toronto, was like, can we do something else, please? Can we talk about any other city in this entire fucking country other than Toronto? 3.25 for Chrysalis. Because it was a short story collection, there were some ones I did like. There was like a Cinderella retelling I really enjoyed from that one, but most of them fell on the medium scale. So 3.25 for the collection overall. Next 3.25 is the Shawshank Redemption by Stephen King. I did listen to the audio version of this. I know that the Shawshank Redemption is technically from a short story collection that has other stories. I only listened to the Shawshank Redemption. This was a 3.25 for me. I think the problem with this one for me is I've already seen the movie. So I liked the movie and I would rather just watch the movie, but I have to give credit to the fact that the movie wouldn't exist if the book didn't exist. So it's like a 3.25 because honestly, it probably wouldn't have even been my thing, but I did enjoy the movie. For anyone who doesn't know what the Shawshank Redemption is about, it's told from the perspective of this man in prison who's like known in the prison for being able to acquire things for people. And one of the other prisoners asks him for like a poster and a rock spoon. And go watch the movie. Morgan Freeman's in it. It's great. And the last 3.25 star was Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer. This is the first book in the Southern Reach series. In this book, there is like this weird dome area and a bunch of specialists are sent in to investigate this area, and then weird things start happening. 3.25 because I think there were interesting elements to the plot here, but I didn't connect to the characters that much. It is very much the first book in a series, so I will continue the series and see if maybe I can pick up on some threads a bit more in the rest of the series. So far, Annihilation, I think I just went in with too high of expectations because I had heard such great things about it. We have our 3.5 stars, and there were 8 books that ended up with this rating. The first is The Last Days of Jack Sparks by Jason Arnott. This is about Jack Sparks, and he is this like skeptic who investigates paranormal things, basically writes books debunking them. So then we go through a series of his investigations, the like last ones he ever did, and we kind of see how they end up being weaved together. So maybe he's not so correct about paranormal things not being real. 3.5 for this one. I really liked the ending. It was getting a bit slow for me in the middle. I didn't know where it was going. Then the ending surprised me. It picked up for me from there, and I liked how it wrapped up. So 3.5 overall because the pacing in the middle, a little off. Jack Sparks, also a fucking dick. Not a likable character. But overall, 3.5, it was pretty decent. If you like paranormal stories where the skeptic is very wrong about what's going on, maybe this would be a book for you. And also if you like where the narrator, the main perspective, is someone you're not gonna like. Next at 3.5, we have A Dangerous Collaboration by Deanna Raybourn. This is the 4th book in the Veronica Speedwell series. Veronica is our main character. She is this Victorian woman who is a very quick-witted and smart, and she teams up with this like naturalist Stoker, and they solve crimes together. In this one, Veronica is invited by Stoker's brother to go to this remote island to like check out this rare type of butterfly because she's a lepidopterist, and she investigates butterflies. And then obviously Stoker doesn't trust his brother, so he finagles his way onto the island, and they end up investigating this woman who disappeared on the night of her wedding, and it goes from there. This one got 3.5. Just found the mystery interesting. We're also getting Stoker and Veronica. They're getting closer. I don't know about the series. I think I just heard so many great things and so many other people love it that I'm like, it's good. I don't love it. So it gets a 3.5. I'm enjoying it. I'm gonna finish the series. Hoping in a book or two when the romance really starts up that I'll like it more, because I think I mentioned before, I stopped reading the Friday Fisher mystery series because I was hoping that the romance from the show would be in the books and it wasn't, and like this is giving me that. This is the slow burn romance that I was hoping from Miss Fisher. The mysteries are just kind of alright. So 3.5 for A Dangerous Collaboration. Also 3.5, Haven by Emma Donoghue. So this is a book that's like set in like when monks were still a thing. I assume they're still a thing now, but like monks definitely aren't so much of a thing as they used to be. There's these monks and they're super religious, and one of them is like, I've gotten a word from God that we are too integrated in society and we need to leave and go somewhere without temptation. So he and 2 other monks that he hand chooses go to a very remote island and try to basically set up a new city there. What is it called when monks are all congregated in the same place? Abbey? The word I was looking for was monastery. Whatever the term is, on this remote island. The guy who's running everything maybe shouldn't be running everything. Then there's an older guy who like actually knows survival stuff, and then a young guy who has to do all the physical labor. Basically, it's just them struggling to live on this island because this island's not suitable for habitation. I give this one a 3.5. I did really enjoy the 2 other characters that aren't the speaking to God guy. This is like religious Lord of the Flies kind of. I don't know if that's the most accurate description, but close enough. Overall, it was a good survival story, which I'm not a huge fan of survival stories, so I'm surprised I enjoyed this even as much as I did. But yeah, 3.5 for Haven. Next 3.5 is The House on the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. There is this world essentially where sometimes children are born with magical powers or are magical creatures in some way, and the government has basically like taken them away from their parents and they put them in like orphanages to section them off from the rest of society. And our main character like works for the government and he does inspections on these orphanages. He's very bureaucratic and he very much is like, I'm doing my job to the letter. And then he is chosen to go and investigate this orphanage that's on an island, and he ends up really bonding with the children there. The strength of this book is really the characters, particularly the children. Each of them, you know, is a different kind of magical thing. You do really grow to have an affection for them. Overall, I thought that the plot was really predictable. Like really predictable. This was a discussion we had in my book club. It's like, is this a YA book? Because it reads so young, especially because of how predictable the plot was, but also the main character is like a 40-year-old man. And from what I can see on like the website for Canada's biggest bookstore, Indigo, this is shelved just as like fantasy. So not in the YA fantasy. It reads on the younger side. So if you are someone who likes a more challenging read, this is not going to be for you. If you like quirky characters and like lovable children, this will be for you. But it is just a 3.5 for me. I have also seen critiques of this book that the author took inspiration from Canadian residential schools, which is not great if you actually know about the history of residential schools, considering how positively the view of the orphanages is in this book. Go into that with that in mind if you want to be a bit more critical of it. The next 3.5 is a graphic novel, and this was Strayed by Carlos Gaffoni. This is a sci-fi graphic novel about a future where we are looking for resources on different planets, and this woman has a cat that can kind of like astral project and will like search planets to see where they should go to extract the resources that they need. This kind of causes problems because they maybe wipe out the populations on the planets that they need the resources from, and it's not great. But I did enjoy the comic. The art style is really cool. The cat, so cute, but not anything super special. So it got a 3.5 from me. Still worth reading, but not something I'd like buy to put on my shelf. Next 3.5 is also Melissa Broder, and this one is the Pisces. So in this one, we have a main character who is going through a breakup, and her sister is like, hey, get out of your rut, come dog sit for me while I'm on vacation. The main character accepts this, and then she ends up falling in love with a merman, and she's a fucking awful person. I don't want to spoil it, But there is like one thing that people commonly say is like the step too far if you want to make a character unlikable. This is the only thing you have to have them do. This character does it. My sibling is the one who recommended this book for me, and I had to text them like, what do you mean? Why didn't you warn me? I probably wouldn't have read this book if I knew this was gonna happen. If you like books with unlikable characters, the Pisces, because freaking hated the main character. Next, we have Whalefall by Daniel Kraus. This is about a man whose father recently died at the bottom of the ocean because he basically like committed suicide while diving. He is going to see if he can retrieve his father's body, and he ends up swallowed by a whale, which like, that was the interesting part of this book. But the book spent a lot of time on the like really messed up relationship between this guy and his father. If you like books about daddy issues, this is the book for you. Personally, I wanted more of him like using what his dad taught him to escape and save himself from being swallowed by a sperm whale, which I have a sperm whale tattooed on me. So I feel a connection to specifically that type of whale too. There were some really tense moments in here when he's like running out of air or he's injured and he's trying to figure out how to like staunch the blood while in the stomach of a whale, and I wanted more of that, not so much more of the daddy issues, but overall 3.5. Last 3.5 is Small Game by Blair Braverman. This is another survival story. I ended up just reading a bunch of survival stories. It wasn't planned. It wasn't a theme I was going for in a vlog or anything, but it happened. Small Game is about this group of people who have been selected to go on a game show where they're like trying to recreate prehistoric time. So they are thrown into the woods with like minimal clothing, and they have to use their own knowledge to survive, build a shelter, find food, etc., etc. And then one day the crew just stops showing up. So they have to start surviving for real. There were interesting aspects here. I did find the end to be a very interesting point. Did enjoy some of the characters. It was just not anything that was particularly high up in my type of story, because it is very much a survival story, not usually so much my thing, which is why I'm confused as to how I ended up reading so many this month. If you like those kind of survival stories, I think it was a good one, especially if you like strong female characters who are really knowledgeable, because there is our main female character here who is the one who actually knows the most. So that one I gave a 3.5 to. Next, we have our 3.75, and the first one of that is Girlfriend on Mars by Deborah Willis. So this book is like a kind of near future science fiction where the main character is competing on a game show to win a spot to be one of the first people to colonize Mars. It is basically about the relationship struggles between this woman who is trying to do this really great thing that she's super excited about, and her boyfriend who's like, okay, but you're leaving me behind though. I give this a 3.75. I found the writing really enjoyable in this one. The boyfriend character was awful and I hated him, and anytime he talked I was just like, shut up, let's go back to your girlfriend who's doing interesting shit. I thought the concept was interesting, and then also obviously it pulled on some like real life things of like the billionaire who's like, oh yeah, by the way, I'm funding this whole thing just because like I want to be on Mars, but I don't want to be first because what if it kills me? So like, let me just let these monkeys dance for me and test it out first. 3.75 overall because I hated the boyfriend character. And also the main character maybe made some questionable decisions as well, but the concept overall of like a game show to be the first to colonize Mars, found that interesting. Next, at 3.75 is kind of like an opposite narrative where you're supposed to not like the boyfriend, but I did. Juliet Naked by Nick Hornby. I, again, won't go into too much details on my exact thoughts about this one because there is a vlog coming up. This one is about a man who's like obsessed with this band from the 80s that had like one album, and then the lead singer like quit dramatically and disappeared off the face of the earth. So he's obsessed with this band, and he's been in a relationship with this woman for like 15 years, and they're kind of in a rut in their relationship. And then like some demos of that band get leaked, and he writes a review like, I love it, it's great. And she writes a review like, nah, it's kind of shit though. And then that Rockstar guy reaches out to her and they start like flirting back and forth by email, and she doesn't tell him. I did like elements of the plot here. Did not like the main female character. She annoyed me, even though I don't think I'm supposed to be annoyed by her. And it is kind of about regretting your past life, and also about the nature of art and whether art itself has value even if you don't like your own art. 3.75, I enjoyed aspects of that. Full thoughts in a video coming soon. Next is an arc that I was very kindly given by NetGalley, which is Whoever You Are, Honey by Olivia Gatwood. This is about a woman who lives with like a quirky older woman because she is kind of running from something in her past, and then a new couple who's like gentrifying the neighborhood move in across the street, and she starts to befriend the new wife. And this book is kind of about memory and reconciling with your past, because the main character I already mentioned, who's running from her past, is like trying to forget what happened. And then the neighbor across the street, she struggles because she can't remember her past. She can be told things that happened in her past and be like, yeah, I guess that happened, but she doesn't have any memories of her past herself. And there is maybe like a little bit of a sci-fi tint going on with that. So this is about kind of like Silicon Valley, it's about gentrification, and it is about, you know, reconciling with your past. I gave this one a 3.75. I did really like the characters. I thought that the one escaping her past, when that was revealed, it's something that maybe not to that extreme, but it's definitely something if you have had like a dramatic friendship breakup, you might be able to relate to. But I do wish that it had expanded more on those sci-fi elements, because it is kind of something that is very quickly brought up and then kind of dealt with in a way that leaves the ending ambiguous. I wish it had leaned into those a bit more. That was a very interesting plot line that just didn't seem to have anything at the end of it. And The Last Murder at the End of the World was the last 3.75 from the month. So this book is by Stuart Turton, and in this book there is like a plague of locusts basically, and they will devour everything. And the last refuge is this island where someone has erected a dome to keep them safe. And then the person who's kind of in charge of running that dome gets murdered, and because there's a failsafe in the programming that if she is ever killed, the dome stops working, there is a struggle to try and figure out who murdered her so that they can maybe fix the system to be able to get the dome and keep themselves safe again. There's kind of two classes of citizens on the island. There's the elders, who remember the before times and are kind of like hundreds of years old, and then there is the workers who actually keep the thing running. And I was surprised at how well I was able to follow the amount of characters we had in this one, which is a credit to Stuart Turton's writing. I did have very high expectations going in because I love the 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle and how that narrative was written. So this one's a 3.75 because I don't think it was quite as strong as that one, but I did still enjoy the mystery here. I thought that some of the interesting elements of the science fiction were really well done. So a 3.75, I would still recommend this. Just temper your expectations because it's not as good as the 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle in my opinion. Now for the 4 stars, we have A Grain of Truth, which is one of the Witcher graphic novels by Shawshank Redemption. Polish name, I did my best. I believe this is a retelling of one of the stories that's in The Last Wish. So Geralt happens along this abandoned castle and there's a beast living there. So it is kind of like a Beauty and the Beast retelling. If you enjoyed the story, I'm sure you will enjoy the graphic novel retelling of it. I gave it a 4 star because it wasn't an original story, but I still enjoyed it. It was well done and I enjoyed the story when I read it the first time. I also enjoyed it in graphic novel form, but doesn't get points for originality, so only a 4. Next 4 is A Court of Wings and Ruin, which is the 3rd book in the ACOTAR series by Sarah J. Maas. In this book, it is the 3rd in the series. Feyre is with the Night Court now after what happened in the 2nd book, and the war is upon us. And so they have to try to amass allies with the other courts to save both the Night Court, which is the enemy of the dude right now, and then also try and protect the humans from taking the wall down. This one was a 4 star. I enjoyed it. I hate that I enjoyed it. The characters are good though. Like, I like the way the characters are written. They're all really likable. The plot, also interesting. The world building. The part about the mirror I thought was really interesting. I really liked how the like creatures come into the story. I'm trying to talk around things without spoilers. There was a very emotional death in this book, so overall it was a 4-star. I hate that I like these, but I have to give credit where credit is due. Next 4-star, another graphic novel, The Electric Black by Joseph Schmalke. This one reminded me quite a bit about The Silver Coin. In this one, there's like this mystical pawn shop where once you have walked in, you must leave with an object, and all of the objects are like cursed in some way, right? And similar to Silver Coin, it was a lot of like showing the background of each of these cursed objects, but I did prefer this one. This one had a present narrative that we were following of these like kids who don't know what they're meddling with, do a spell to like break into the pawn shop, and it doesn't go well for them. So a 4-star for this one. I thought that the background of all of the different artifacts was really interesting, the binding narrative, but it did just kind of end, and I would have wanted a second volume of this because I think I could have enjoyed a continuation of this story, but by itself it's a 4-star. Next 4-star is Witches Abroad by Terry Pratchett. This is the 12th book in the Discworld series. It is about the witches. There is a spot available for a fairy godmother in a distant kingdom, so the witches of wherever we are right now have to travel to this new kingdom, and it is them kind of like going into different towns and totally messing up the social conventions. And a lot of the like different cultures were based on like different analogs to real places. And I think Terry Pratchett is at his strongest when he is doing parody. There was like a fake France and there was like a fake Spain, and I really enjoyed that aspect of it where I'm like, haha, running with the bulls, that's something from Spain. And again, I think that's when Terry Pratchett is his strongest, when he's playing on something that's an analog to our real world. So this one was a 4-star for me. Still hasn't given me a 5-star read. I'm still not in love with Discworld, but it was a stronger one from him, so 4. Next 4-star is Split Tooth by Tanya Tagaq. Still in that vlog that's coming, so I'll keep my thoughts brief on it. This is about a woman who is living in the Northern Territories of Canada. I think it was Nunavut specifically. It is alternating between like stories about her life and then also poetry, and it gets some mystical mythology things, and I believe some of the mystical elements are based on Indigenous creation myths, so there was an aspect of that. I gave this a 4-star because there was a WTF moment within this book where I'm like, what is happening? Then I did enjoy it, but then the ending didn't end how I wanted it to end, so I might have taken some points off from that. There was also a trope in here that I hate. Why do people keep recommending me books with pregnancy in them, Lindsay? Anyway, the last 4-star is The Tea Dragon Society by Kay O'Neill. This is a graphic novel about a little fantasy world, and there are these like dragons that grow tea leaves, and if they're really happy with their owner, they like do really well. And the Tea Dragon Society used to be really big, but they're like not as popular as they used to be. So this like little girl finds a dragon and they're trying to like revive the tea dragon. And this is just a cozy fantasy. The art style is so beautiful and it's so cozy and optimistic, and I did really enjoy this. It got a 4-star from me. Next, we have 2 books at 4.25. The first is So Fluorescent, which was the third of those books from the LGBT2SL Plus award nomination video. It's a play about someone who, after a night of partying, wakes up with a text from their friend like, we're done. And you get in Act 1, the like that person's perspective of like, I don't know what I did wrong, this is how our night went, and then I blacked out. And then you, in the second act, you get the friend's perspective of like, yeah, this wasn't just about what happened that night, this is a long-standing, festering issue. This book addresses cultural appropriation within the LGBT2SL community. It was very brief, but it made its point and I really enjoyed it. I recommend this if you can find a copy of it. It's only 40 pages. It's a very quick read, but I think it was so well done, and honestly I kind of wish I could see a live production of it, though that's probably not gonna happen. Next 4.25 is Horror Movie by Paul Tremblay. So in Horror Movie, there is a horror movie that kind of has achieved cult status because of the events that surrounded the production of the movie. And the movie never ended up being released. And then like 20 years later, someone is trying to remake the movie and reaches out to someone who was on the original production. So you get the story of what happened on the production of the original, what is happening during the remake, and then you also get scripts of like what was supposed to happen in the movie Horror Movie. And I read the audiobook, which I highly recommend because those script sections are done like a table read, and it was a really cool format to read it in. So I gave this a 4.25. I listened to this entire audiobook while getting a tattoo, and it was a great distraction for the amount of pain I was in. It was my longest tattoo session to date. It was rough, but I was sufficiently distracted by Horror Movie that I made it through without having to take very many breaks. Recommend Horror Movie. I recommend the audiobook specifically. The plot was really interesting. The characters were really interesting. And again, that format of like having the table read in there was a really great boon to the book. So 4.25. Next, we have one book at 4.5 stars, and that is Devil House by John Darnielle. This is another one from the upcoming vlog, so I won't go too much into detail, but we do have a journalist who writes true crime stories, and he decides his next project is going to be to write a book on this Devil House. Coincidentally, the property's for sale, so he actually buys it so he can try and connect to the property and recreate some of the like staging to see what would have happened at that time. So you get that, you get the story of one of his older crime novels, and then you also get the story of what happened in the Devil House. So there's kind of three main narratives here. This is not a paranormal or a horror book in the classical sense. This is very much more about true crime and the ethics of it and the ethics of memory, and I really enjoyed this one. This one mostly got points taken off from me because it kept mentioning Keanu Reeves' movie without mentioning him specifically, and I can't count that in my spreadsheet unless it mentions him by name. If he had just said Keanu like once, this could have been a 5-star read. And the top for the month is a tie, and they're both in the same series though. It is the Tea Dragon Festival and the Tea Dragon Tapestry. These are from the Tea Dragon graphic novel series, as I mentioned in the last one. The art is just so pretty in these, and I thought the second and the third's narratives were a lot stronger. These made me emotional for some reason. There is an optimism to them. It is a really lovely mythology that they're building here about the relationship between people. They're kind of people. They have some mystical elements to them, and the dragons that live in the society. It was really pretty and beautiful, and I enjoyed it. So these get tied first place and 5 stars for me this month. So those are all 30 books that I read in June. Let me know in the comments down below what the best book you read in June was, or leave a dragon emoji. I know you made it to the end of this video. If you enjoyed, please like this video and consider subscribing to see more of my future videos. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great day. I need my coffee.